Accident victims like you deserve better. A husband and wife were rear-ended, and insurance offered them $10,000. We litigated the case and got them $375,000. Qualified expert attorneys can get you more. Call Zirkin and Smerling today.
Good evening, Baltimore City. This is City Voters Live Podcast. I'm your host, Desmond Stenney, and joined this evening, I got a special guest joining us on this special live podcast from the peace organization, People for Elected Accountability and Civic Engagement. Mr. Jovani Patterson will be joining us this evening in studio. How you doing, Jovani?
Man, I'm well, man. What's up?
Oh, man. I think that's a loaded question this week.
Yeah, man.
That is a loaded question this week. What's up? I'll tell you there's a lot up right now. And I can tell you that we're putting a lot of data up right now for people. But obviously we've been both doing a lot of advocacy along the same lines, in the city over the past, 8 or 9 months. None more than the complete streets.
You're a bit of a nerd, man.
Well, I was getting to that. I was just sitting here minding my business, and you came to me showing me all this information about complete streets, and now I'm in it.
Yeah, man.
Now I'm in it. And but any fight that is about equity for the people of Baltimore City, that's about especially when it comes to a fiscal standpoint. And when you look at the amount of money that we're spending on this and what we're committed to spend, and when you think about what that money could be going to, rather than fixing problems that don't exist, that's where it really gets my interest and will get my attention because with pools being closed in the summer and districts not having rec centers and not having the educational opportunities and vocational opportunities for young people to give them other avenues and we're spending money on these projects when we'll get into it, but
yeah, I think that's the big frustration though people are experiencing is we citizens see all these other things that could be, happening in Baltimore, but
right.
It seems like, pet projects or, these projects for, a certain type of person take priority versus the actual needs of the people.
And, I'm glad you brought up the word priority because it's a frustrating fight. It's really tough to get folks, once a ship steered towards one direction, it's like turning a tanker around in a puddle.
Yep.
And it's really hard, to get the people who you need to see things for what they are to do that. And even when they do see it, it's even harder to get them to come out and publicly, say those things. And I don't know if you've seen this yet, but there was a moment, I watch, I'm listening to everything as far as journalism is concerned. I've always got the radio on. I've always got the news on. I take as much in as possible for processing. And I think I was taking my son to driver's ed class or picking him up from driver's ed class a couple of Saturdays ago. And, I'm always, my station stuck on C4 and Brian Neiman's, so 101.5 is always, rolling in my car. I'm not usually in it on a Saturday afternoon, but I'm picking up my son from driver's ed class and Odette Ramos is on. And just so, so everybody can get the same experience, we're just going to play the clip that I caught as I was sitting there, waiting for my son to come out.
Deb, let me ask you this question. That there is a lot of, I notice this because I talk a lot about pedestrian safety and bike lanes, that kind of thing, but there's a pretty vocal pushback to reconfiguring city streets for the purpose of slowing down traffic, for the purpose of providing safe transit, pedestrian traffic, bike traffic, et cetera. Where does this come from, do you think?
Well, I think that it comes, this is just from my observation of the debate, I think it comes from the fact that a lot of times when we see traffic calming infrastructure or bike infrastructure or pedestrian infrastructure, that comes up first before we're dealing with the major issues that might be in a neighborhood, like addressing vacant properties, dealing with the illegal dumping, et cetera. So like complaints that residents have been seeing for a really long time, not getting addressed, and then all of a sudden this other infrastructure pulls up that they may not have asked for or been a part of the process. I think that's where this comes from. And so I think we have to do a better job of understanding that, meeting the needs that people have been asking for in a real way, so that all of the concerns are addressed, and it doesn't look like it's just one set of people that are getting their concerns addressed.
I want to ask you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that's it. I think that's part of it. So, as you know, I've been big proponent of addressing vacant and abandoned properties, which, we can talk about whenever you want, because I have a lot to say about it. But I think that there's, and I'm also working hard on dealing with it. But in that case, I think that's where that comes from, where people have been asking for so many things in terms of their neighborhoods and improvement in neighborhoods. All of a sudden, this other infrastructure comes up, and they're like, well, why does the bike lane get done first and not dealing with this vacant house next to
other
me?
significant, interesting point.
So before you say something, notice the end of what Jane Miller's response is, because I think there was something that kind of slipped there, where she responded to saying other more significant things, like bike lanes are taking more priority over other more significant things. I think that was a little bit of a slip, to be honest.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. I tell you, for me, I'm trying to look at it, and the first thing I'm thinking about is the question itself, right? The question comes out. It's I'm not an attorney, but if someone could lead someone toward an answer more than what our friend Jane tried to do there, because we know Jane's a biker, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's on their side. She's not with us on this, and she led her down, because she couldn't just ask her, hey, what do you think this pushback is on complete streets? And just left it at that as a question.
Yeah.
She had to take her down, that it's making the streets safer, and it's improving. It had to have all this about how good the intent of complete streets is supposed to be. So she led her down this road, and I just and I was waited there. Like when I heard the question, it became a situation where I was like, there's only one way Odette can reply to this question. And I was sitting there with bated breath, but then I got something completely different. Yeah,
there's a lot of things that could be said about Ms. Ramos, but she shows up. Like I've seen her, several times out in the community, especially the Baltimore Collegiate School for Boys when they were about to be shut down, and some other issues. And one thing I can say is for sure she shows up. She listens. I may not agree with her on everything, but I can't say she does. She's not present.
No, she is one passionate person. There's no question about that. We had her on the show. I think back in November, we're talking about her inclusionary housing bill, which was amazing work that she put in on that particular bill, and many others. I can't wait to spend additional time with her talking about the work that she's putting in, on the vacant housing issue. And I was reading the other day about her push to have a separate tax, for vacants, for properties that are not being kept up, and the owners, and an absentee, and it's a rundown property. So I think there's a lot that I certainly would love to connect with her on.
Yep.
But it was odd, because sometimes you do things out of pure reaction. It was just instinctual. And in a moment, you could tell the question, it feels like the question caught her a little bit off guard. But let me do this. Let me first say, my applauding of Odette in that moment has nothing to do with how Councilwoman Ramos personally feels about bikes or bike lanes. I don't think her answer had anything to do with that. And we're not certainly trying to say she's on one particular side of that issue or the other. what I applaud was that she heard from constituents and she just told in that moment, just said what she had been hearing, right? And I don't think she was. You could tell because there's a little pause and then a clearing of the breath, clearing of the throat. Sorry, and then she goes into the answer, and at that moment, you're just left with what you know, and what she knew is what people have been saying to her.
Yep, absolutely. So I mean, I applaud her for her response in that because it's exactly what a lot of the community members have been saying.
Right.
You know, and when you really talk to the people, right, you know, people aren't saying just no bike lanes, right? People aren't saying no bike lanes. People are saying, let's have a discussion about these, right? Let's talk about this. And all these things are kind of invading on, you know, our communities when we have all these other issues and we're spending our tax dollars on these particular things. And this is not what we asked for.
Right.
We want our schools to perform better. We want our trash picked up on time. You know, we want, you know, the illegal dumping to end, right? There's a lot of other things that people have been asking for, and it seems like somehow this you know, one, you know, item which is a bit of a luxury has been leapfrogged to the top.
100% luxury.
Yeah.
Let's not even play. It's 100% luxury. I think there are people who use you know, bike lanes as their primary source of transportation. It's I think they choose to do that, in which they do. They have a choice. Everybody has their choices, but I think by and large, people ride bikes for leisure, right? You know, and like you said, no one thinks that there shouldn't be any, but we're just thinking that there's a lot more that needs to be done before that gets done. And you know, to that end, you know, I've been paying attention to, obviously paying attention to, since I've gotten involved with this, paying attention to all the transportation stories. And you know, I don't know, the Banner's just I think some of their stories on transportation are spot on, but I think when it comes to this issue, there always is some willingness for them to hold back on the facts. And on January 17th, they wrote an article. It was titled "Pedestrian Deaths Rise in Maryland, Drop in Baltimore."
So what does that tell you?
I don't know, but I read the article, right? And the thing that grabs me is when it's clearly easy to just give people, you know, information that is plain to for them to understand. That's what you should do, right? There's absolutely no reason for them to quote the number of accidents on a per 100,000 resident basis. And I almost know this, you know, in my head now. I don't even need to look at it anymore. There's a space there where they say there are 150.62 deaths per 100,000 in 2022 and residents, and then in 2023 there was 150.28. I'm not even sure why that's being reported, but I couldn't help myself, right? I couldn't help myself but do the math, right? So they report. Go ahead.
Where was it in the article? But yeah, I mean, you can hide the story in numbers, right? You know, like if there was one person that did something, and then the next year there were two, right? That's 100% increase,
right?
Right. So there's, you know, they say the devil's in the details. You know, like you really got to start investigating stuff, and then when you start examining numbers, what does it tell you? Right.
Exactly. Well, what it told me was that if there were 150.62 deaths, accidents, pedestrian accident crashes per 100,000 people, and then later in the article, there's somewhere I find that they're using the number 592,211 as the actual population of the city. So you just take that, you divide it by 100,000 and times it by 150.62, and you come up with 892 crashes, right? So why not just tell the people that's reading the paper, there were 892 crashes.
What number's bigger? Which number sounds better?
And then they tell you for 2023, because they want to prove that it's gone down, right? So in 2023, they reported per 100,000 again at 150.28. So you just take that by the same 5.92211 that you did for the other calculation, and you come up with, guess what, 890 crashes.
So if my math is right, that's a difference of 2.
That's a difference of 2. It's a difference of 2 crashes, right? So there was 2 less. So breaking news to the people of Baltimore City, as far as vehicle versus pedestrian, and that includes bikes, roller skates, Heelys, skateboards, tricycles, unicycles, whatever you're riding. If you are not a motorized vehicle, there were 892 of those crashes in 2022, and there was 890 of them in 2023. So, guys, we are on the right path. We had 2 less crashes. I think they should write like some follow-up stories about it.
I mean, look, I I never wish, I never want anyone to get hurt, right?
No.
But this, I guess the change is negligible.
Right.
Right. When you're talking about a date, like all these, people have these ideas of saying we're doing it from a data-driven approach, or we're taking, the numbers into account. We're not doing this based on just emotion or how we feel. Right. But you had to add a little bit of emotion into this article based on the way it was reported. Right. Because the data, when you look at the data, it's negligible.
Right. Yeah. It's negligible. and I can tell you what, I got emotional about it. So I started pulling my own crash data. Right. So I'm like, well, at least there's 800. I'm a data geek, right? So at least there's 892 things to analyze here, right? So this thing keeps me up to about 6 this morning, right? And I
told you he was a nerd,
man. Weird things make me excited, and I'm telling you, pulling CSVs and running little crosstabs on them is one of my favorite things to do. But what it boils down to, right, and is that I think at this point I'm just done with it, and I'm just going to start. I just started publishing the data myself.
Yeah.
I said, you know what? I'm just going to pull the spreadsheets, and I'm just going to put them up on Baltimore City voters, and whatever people think of that, they can come to their own conclusions. But there's no reason for anyone to be misled. And I'm going to quote that drop that they said that we had in these crashes, 892 down to 890. That is just for you. So, if you want to know what the percent is, that is a reduction of 0.00007%.
Wow.
You got to go to the 5th decimal place to the right, to hit a number on that reduction. And so I started pulling the data. I said, this is just, if our daily paper is gonna be complicit in all this, then there's only one way that this can be handled, and that is just to give the public exactly what they deserve.
Yeah.
And that is the raw numbers. But what was surprising to me is, as I'm starting to pull these things, I'm looking at the crashes, and then you get all this extra data with it. Well, what happened?
Yeah.
Why was it a crash? Because you know what they're telling us. Oh, cars are speeding.
Yeah.
They're driving too fast.
Now, granted, cars are driving too fast. Let's not. I know for the article, but
no, not for the article.
I mean for the for the narrative, I should say.
Right.
But cars are driving too fast. I will give that. Like, there's one thing that we can agree on.
You got the data?
Cars are driving too fast.
Do you have the data?
Do I have the data of cars?
Yeah.
No, I drive down the street.
I hear you. Don't get me wrong. I get the eye test too. I hear you.
I know.
But there is data out there.
Yeah.
Okay. There's volume data, and then there's speed data.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
So what everybody needs to understand is we're carrying around these cell phones. We're driving around in these GM vehicles with OnStar and everything. And to use Facebook, everybody loves it. Right. We're using it right now. but it's tracking your location and what's on your device, and you got location services on. That data is being tracked, and you're telling people where you are, how fast you're going, and how long it took you to get there.
Yeah,
well,
I know this to be in the example of this, right? Is when you see those signs, particularly when you're on the highway, and it says how
many minutes to get there,
how many minutes to get to the next step. All that data does come from cell phone tracking.
Because in real time, because all that stuff's being reported, so they know if there's a bottleneck, then this phone took from this point to that point took this long, right? So then they're calculating it out and they're putting it up on the street signs. And the folks that have that data and access to that big data, that real time data, is the Department of Transportation, right? Because that's who owns the signs on the highway, right? That's the State Department of Transportation. But the City Department of Transportation, if you call them and ask them, hey, I need a stop sign in front of my house. I'm getting a lot of traffic here and nobody stopped. They're going to go look at that data to see what volume of cars came through. All right. How fast are those cars coming through? And whether or not that crossing, deserves a stop sign.
So that's so if you're in your neighborhood, right? If you ever requested anything in your neighborhood, that's part of the traffic study that they're supposed to complete.
So I'm doing my own studies now, right? Because I can't rely on them to do it, because what we're finding out as we're looking at this crash data is that, and I'm going to talk to you about the speed data, because while you say people are speeding, the overall mean speeds
it's probably
around it's pretty damn close.
You got Sunday drivers out there,
Sunday
man.
drivers. You got
bringing down the average.
I know. In this situation, I agree with you. You can't focus on means. You got to focus on the outliers, right? Because the outliers are the one that's doing all the damage. It's not the 85 people that came through at 35 miles an hour. It's the 4 that came through at 60, right? Those are the ones that are going to cause the damage. So I agree with you. We can't focus on average data when it comes to those types of things, because it's the outliers that are going to cause the damage.
But what did this data show?
This data, you saw it too. Don't try to make it all on me. You looked at it. You looked at it. You were looking, and here it is. So of the accidents, so we really and literally I'm 6 hours removed from becoming my own traffic study. I'm sorry, 12 maybe 12 hours. I'm looking at the fatalities, right? And number one. There in 4 years, 2020, January 1, 2020 to December 31st, 2023, 3 folks on bicycles. That's what's in the data. Right now. I don't know if this data is wrong, but I'm just telling you what's in this data.
So this is straight from the state highways.
The Maryland State Police. Maryland State, the same source that the Banner claims to have used, right? Like the same source, right? I'm looking at the data, and they let who is it? Christine Nizer from the NBA came in, and she's quoted in the article as saying, "Oh, cars and the speed is what's the problem." But what's actually happening is that bikers are found to be at fault 63% of the time. So I'm looking at the data,
right? In the fatal
for the 3 fatal bicycle accidents. I'm sorry, you're right. Yeah, the bikers were at fault 66% of the time on the deaths of bikers between 2020 and the 4 years of 2020 and 2023. Pedestrians, the people on foot, or skateboards or Heelys or whatever they're riding, right? Those folks were at fault 63% of the time.
Wow.
Right. So there was 19 deaths, and no, that was in 2023. There were 19 deaths, 12 of them site, pedestrian area, right? And for the 3 deaths that we've had, 3 deaths
in 4 years,
2020 in 4 years, to 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. 4 whole years, there were 3 deaths of people riding bikes. All right. 2 of them were cited as being at fault.
Yeah.
And we have how much money dedicated to bike lanes?
And that goes into the argument, right? We're investing so much in, and granted, like no death is taken lightly, right? No injury, no accident is taken lightly. However, look at our homicides over that same 4-year period, right? And this is the
1,000 people.
Yeah,
over 1,000 people.
Yes,
right?
Yes,
over 1,000 people.
So if you're going to invest in an area, right? Let's invest there.
It's the bang for the buck here. I mean,
right? And let's look at this too. Like, how many of those streets, right, have been paved since then?
Right.
Mm-hmm. How many? And let's talk about the sidewalks.
Right.
How many of the sidewalks are level and straight? Don't have trees growing out of
them. Yeah. You know who's dying? The people on foot. 19 of them in 2023 alone. 19 people on foot or similar, not on a bike. Whatever it is, not on a bike. 19 of them perished at the from being struck by a vehicle, whether or not it was their fault. Even though 63% of them, not their fault, but they contributed to whatever happened. Why are we not more focused on, like, light up the intersections like Raven Stadium?
Yeah,
you can't see them. Right?
Yeah, I think that's a feasible or a good solution.
Sensors. So I got these things in my yard because the deer come and eat all your flowers and your plants. You got to shoo them away. I got these little buzzers that go off to tell me like there's something in the yard right here. Little motion sensor. And why are we spending money on sensors that'll tell cars that there's a human in the intersection when one enters one, whether they enter that intersection illegally or not, or the roadway illegally or not?
Yeah, I think there's opportunities to be really innovative, right? And that's
if we want to save lives, that's really what we're trying to do.
Yeah, if we want to do that, right. But we're just not taking those opportunities, right? It's kind of like this prescriptive approach, right? And it doesn't really take into account the problem solving ability of the community. Rumble strips, lighten up the intersection, and things that we can do right now.
JP, it's beyond that. They have this data, right? We're just looking at it for the first time. They have this information. Our Department of Transportation has this information. And they show up to council hearings in front of Ms. Porter or Councilwoman Porter and say, we don't have any data. BS. They got the data. They're not bringing it to the meeting because they don't want anyone to see what it's saying. Yeah. Right. Because if anyone looks at this data, and they will, right? Because we're going to make sure they do. When they look at the data, they're going to say, what in the heck is a bike lane going to fix this? Yeah. Right. Yeah. And Councilwoman Porter is going to probably be very, very upset. But these guys, and we're going to get to it in a minute. But we had a meeting with DOT just the other night.
Yeah, absolutely.
And guess what they showed up with? No data. You've given more data in the past 5 minutes. And that's the sad part, right? That's sad.
So first off, I would like to give credit to Councilman Mosby. Or Council President Mosby for for organizing this thing, because a lot of the community members have been pretty vocal about it.
Right.
Let's talk to us, right? And you got to definitely shout out to him for
Council President stepped up in the big way
for setting it up, right? Yeah. And one of the big pushbacks that we're receiving, right? Let's stop having all these hearings. Let's stop having all these conversations you hear from some of the,
because you might hear too
opponents,
much,
right?
Yeah.
But the reason why the citizens keep asking for these things, right, is because the city government isn't providing the data. So and here's the thing about Baltimore. What I've learned in my time of just being out in the community and stuff, Baltimore City voters will give you a chance.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Baltimore City residents will give you a chance.
Yep.
Right. We say, hey, you're saying this is good for us. You're saying this is the reason. Okay, so show us.
Show us.
Okay, we need a meeting.
Yep.
Show us.
Show us. And then what happens is everything around. What happens is nothing. Things don't make sense. When things don't make sense, people just going to have more questions.
Yes.
And the more I got involved with this situation, the more it just became more curious and more curious. I'm like, no, this is not adding up. Like none of this is adding up. And and now that you look at the raw crash data, and I can't wait to start looking at the speed data. But like I said, I think speed's a little different because you really are focused on the outliers, you're not focused on a per incident basis. It's the outliers that are really troubling. But at the end of the day, I think that people should know. I mean, and because they're spinning this narrative that it's all about speed of vehicles, right? And that's not the case at all. Because if I can't see you, it doesn't matter if I'm doing 30 miles an hour or 35, right? I just when I and I was asking around to friends, and I said, are you hearing of instances where people are getting hit, pedestrians en masse are getting hit by 60-mile-an-hour traveling vehicles? And I was looked at, no, that's not what's happening.
But remember, hold on. Is this the point that you got to make too about this, right? They've personified the car, right? So it's cars versus humans,
right?
As if
the car's a breathing thing,
right? As if cars aren't being driven by people, right? But it's just this crazy argument. But no, like people aren't. You may not like the speed that that the car is coming by, but they're not hitting you,
right? And
I'm not justifying speeding. Please don't take this the wrong way. I'm not justifying the speeding, but we haven't seen where there's an epidemic or a pandemic of
60-mile-an-hour cars striking people. Yeah, it's not happening, right? So that's what I mean by fixing problems that don't exist. They're manufacturing problems, and most of that is because this whole effort and this whole narrative is spun, by the bike lobbyists. And when you have that infiltrate your Department of Transportation, and they're taking over community groups, in neighborhoods, and just egregious conflicts of interest. What's been done on 28th Street is an absolute travesty from a Treasury standpoint, from a privilege standpoint. I mean, and they didn't even care. They robbed their own neighborhood.
Wow.
They got this. Like one of the board members on a neighborhood association. The association is run by this family, this two husband and wife, and then their friends, right? And they have friends that own businesses on that block. And they got this whole big public area. I should pull it up, but I'm not. I'll post the parklet. Yeah, I'll post it with the episode. I don't even feel like going to look for it right now. But this whole parklet situation, and literally that parklet is outside of Matt Williams's Mount Royal soap. And if you look, Matt Williams is on the board of GRIA with Jed's wife, right? And Shayna Rose, who works for DOT. Right. And
so they're buddy with city government, right? And well, let me say this, right? Because this goes into the Complete Streets Ordinance and how that thing, how that works, right? So part of the Complete Streets Ordinance is, community engagement, right? And a lot of the communities feel like they haven't been engaged, right? But to me, it's just a checkbox after everything has been prescribed,
right?
But here's where the super hyper focus of the bike law, and it's not illegal.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a little bit unethical or questionable.
It's a conflict,
but it's not illegal.
Right.
What they do is they put certain people in certain places. Right. You look at the Ryan Dorsey. You look at who's now director of DOT. You look at some of the staff that's been in DOT. You look at the neighborhood associations.
Yep.
You look at so you got people involved in all levels of this that are part of this same lobby, right? So it's now saying, did we check the neighborhood engagement checkbox? Well, yes. But the neighborhood engagement part, they just picked all their friends to be in the group.
They just picked all their friends to be in group. So they manufactured the engagement.
Yes.
And then other neighborhoods, they just figure out other ways to manufacture that engagement.
Absolutely.
And
Well, I commend them. They're very highly organized, and it goes back to these and this is why I do stuff with peace, right? Is because our mission is to bring power back to the people, right? And we're also trying to overcome a lot of that political apathy that a lot of people have felt, right? People feel like, their vote doesn't matter, or whenever I do things, like it's not going to change in the community. And this is, kind of a result of not being involved in that political process. And, nature hates a vacuum, right? So there has to be somebody to fill these positions. And since these neighborhood association positions are open, since some of these, community improvement association positions are open, that transitions up to the DOT, and the people that need to run for office don't run for office in Baltimore City. Because those positions are open, that leaves a lot of room for a lot of these other initiatives and agendas to kind of creep in. Right.
No, I mean, that's fair. It is fair. And that's what, and they've strategically done that. And I think they came around in the late millennium, trying to put these stuff in. They ended up getting, some of it ripped out. I think, candidate Dixon spoke about that. Having lanes put in, and then she ripped them out. So they came back and they said, all right, well, we got to have something foolproof, right? So then they came back with the ordinance, the complete street ordinance, right? So now it's a law, right? So it's not just something that you can easily, and they pushed it through, because most people are not going to pay attention to an infrastructure bill. You're not going to feel the impacts of infrastructure until it starts changing. Until it happens. You're not going to foresee that, in the legislative process, 2 or 3 years before it's actually going to happen. But now that these projects are coming along, people are starting to feel it, and they're saying that this doesn't make sense. And now what you got the Department of Transportation, who is hiding data from them. Won't show them, won't even show it to the council.
But they've also become advocates. I mean, they're
one and the same. They're one and the same. Become part of this. They're one and the same. We did a little advocacy on 28th Street back on I think it was September 7th. We did an advocacy project right there on 28th Street, where they were just opening up that whole configuration. Man, my wife went down to take my daughter to visit a friend. And she called me from the road and said, do you realize that the street sign that's supposed to be redirecting traffic so that they would know that the road configuration is changed? That's why the sign was there, was to redirect traffic. But instead, the sign had been programmed by DOT to say a message to us, to the people who were doing the advocacy. And so I said,
weren't you a pedestrian in that case too?
Yes. Oh my goodness. And I said, and that's where the alarm went off. And I said, you know what? The transportation department's complicit. In this. It's not just this neighborhood association. The transportation department has got to be complicit in all this. And but we're gonna do what we can, to hold that agency accountable. They're gonna get back to serving the people of Baltimore, and we're gonna look at data in a real way, and we're gonna look at the real reasons that we're having, because everybody wants a walkable city, and it benefits all of us to have a walkable city. I mean, we got to walk before we can ride a bike, right? We got to be able to have people walk safely around our city. And we should be doing that. But do you want to cover the meeting with Nick? What did you think? How did you feel about what transpired on Tuesday night?
So look, I thought the engagement was really good. Just disappointed with the lack of we said it already, with the lack of preparation and the ability to answer questions. I think you had quite a few questions, and I don't believe many of them were really answered. And hopefully, there's a bit of a follow-up, particularly about what's going on Gwynns Falls Parkway, and what the residents, are feeling over there. And man, I look up to, Miss Batts and Miss Kelly and Miss Mary. Man, they are, they've become my heroes, because they really show how to get it done, and how to organize, and how to stay civil. right? Because this is a group of people that say, just let us have a seat at the table,
right,
and let's talk about these things versus, you just forcing it on us, right? And
it's sad. It's sad. Like I could not get involved with this when Miss Mary came and asked me to help. I don't know, and it's just the disrespect.
Yeah.
The disrespect that is paid to those women of color who are elderly, who have given their lives to public service. Ms. Hughes' husband served in our legislature, have given their lives to public service of this city, right? These are the legacies.
Yeah.
And, to be in that meeting and looking at the chat room of these little, 25, 30-year-old punks, talking to them the way that they do.
Yeah.
Right. Writing emails to them the way that they do. Going to their homes and taking pictures of it the way that they do.
There's no call. Like there's no justification for those type of actions, right? Posting her address and her house on social media to fulfill whatever. Right. These people, and somebody tried to, I said something. I did one interview on TV about bike lanes, and then the next day they're trying to
get
me fired from my job because they're saying I'm a threat to democracy.
Right?
Why? Me voicing my concerns as a taxpaying citizen of Baltimore City is a threat to democracy.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm getting those same stupid texts.
I don't get it. I don't get it. Yeah. And if you can't, and this
like your email to me is a threat to democracy. That's what it is. Like, what are you talking about?
Like if you're really backing up your argument, there's no need for personal attacks or trying to take someone's livelihood or anything like that, right? Yeah. I've been open and honest and saying, let's have a discussion. I mean, you can go down my Twitter and I've had civil discussions with people about bike lanes and about the infrastructure and about how I feel about complete streets. But when the retort is, well, I need to get you fired, or I'm going to post your house on social media, or I'm going to make sure you shut up. Right.
Yeah. They're not used to us doing this. Like they don't want it. I mean, that's just the element of supremacy, right? You're going to do what I want you to do, or I'm going to make sure you can't even have sustenance. Right.
There's no justification for that. Yeah. And, people don't have to agree with me. But one thing, you see me on TV, you can hit me up. I'll respond to you. And I'm always going to I can have a beer with you. Yeah. I just have I just feel the way I feel about things, right? And in any healthy relationship, you always have to have that push and pull, give and take, right? And I'm married, so if it was all my way, that would be a problem in a relationship. Yeah. If it was all my wife's way, that would be a problem in a relationship.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure most of these people probably have relationship problems, because I can't imagine that anyone could spend a whole lot of time with them unless they don't treat. But I mean, they it's and this is their culture. I mean, this is who they are.
And how do you have time to do that?
I mean, these are the ones who they got a trophy because their parents paid a registration fee, right? They don't know what it is.
I'm not showing up at anybody's house, man. Yeah,
they're showing up to people's houses. They're taking pictures of people's houses. They are because you just are not falling in line, right? Hey, come on,
get that whip out, man.
I tell you, you come around here.
Good Lord, man! That's like the chat was kind of
it was hostile,
a hotbed, right?
Yeah, it was hostile.
I thought the meeting was very civil, at least the audible part, and I think there was a really. There was a chance for others to speak, and then they went off topic.
Right
there, it was kind of directed back. But I thought overall the meeting was very civil,
very well done, very well orchestrated by Derek Green.
I just don't think people walked away from the meeting with any less questions than going in.
Right. Well, yeah, we certainly didn't walk out with any answers, right? But at least we got to ask some real questions.
Yeah.
And like I said, more importantly, it's one thing for us to be saying the things that we're saying. It's another thing for the council president to say, I'm going to make sure everybody gets to hear how you answer their question this time.
Yeah.
It's not going to be, they're not going to be settled up in a church out on Gwynns Falls Parkway.
Yeah.
It's important for everyone to hear Councilwoman Odette Ramos say what she said off the cuff.
Yeah.
Right. It was pure. Right. But that's what's happening. So people feel their priorities aren't being met. Now, when they start digging into this data and they realize how much they've been lied to and how much has been shielded from them, I think that's when it's going to turn to fury.
Yeah.
Right. People are going to be furious because, like you said, we are forgiving people. But when we find out that what you've done is completely malice and intentional,
we'll run you out of here.
Yeah, that's when I think that tide will turn on them. And
look what happened to Jamal Bryant.
People only take so much. They can only take so much, and I didn't say that. That was him.
It happened. It was in history. Yeah. It was in the books.
Yeah, but man, brother, I really appreciate you coming by and hanging out with me tonight. I needed this. I really needed this. It's been a week, and when I look at this data and I see it like the fury is already in me, but I know when it gets explained to everyone where that's going to go, and this is going to be an issue, come May.
Just think about this, man. You spending millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to address the 3 fatalities over 4 years, versus our education system, versus our education system, versus the cleanliness of our streets,
right?
Versus
quality of life,
the quality of life of people that are living here, working hard to pay their the water bills. No one is addressing how high the water bills have gotten. People used to pay $20 a quarter, now paying $100 a month, right? There's so many other issues.
Taxes, right?
There's so many other issues that could be addressed. And it seems like, again, this one got leapfrogged to the top.
And I tell you what, the fun, and not funny, but the worst part of it all, it's not even being used.
And they don't have that data either. But I think here's what gives me an indication. I mean, a hint that they might have the data, right? So when it snowed, right, they said the most used bike lanes were plowed. How do you know which ones are the most used? You got to have some data on it. So they had to plow.
They just made that up.
they might have.
No. Literally in the hearing, Director Johnson was talking about they had just gotten some grant that they could hopefully buy some counters. So here's the thing: we spent all this money, millions and tens, almost hundreds of millions of dollars, right? We spent all that money, and there was never a in place to even measure usership, like user.
If you build it, they will come.
Ridership. If you build it, they will come. That's really just what we did.
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
And look, I'm say this again. I am not against bike lanes.
No.
I don't think anybody
that's wasting money.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody that's pushing back on this, and I think people get demonized and mislabeled as anti-bike lane. People aren't against bike lanes.
Right. Yeah.
People saying, let's first off, let's get our priorities straight. Right. And 2, let's put the bike lanes where they go, where they make sense.
Right. Like on a nicely, evenly paved road somewhere.
And the other thing too that I'm adding, right? Let's go back to driver education, right? Because it's at least when I was taught how to drive, I was always taught to share the road. Right. Look out for everybody, because you're not just driving for you, you're driving for everybody else that's on the road. Yep. And you also want to make the people, make sure the people that's in your car get to the destination safely.
Yep.
Right. So you're not just driving for you. Right. And I think we've lost a lot of that in our sense of community.
Right.
Because a lot of people don't care whether it's a driver, whether it's a biker, whether it's a pedestrian.
Right.
Right. And it's just an attitude and we have to address that part too.
Yeah, and a lot of those things get lost, and sometimes those things just become, public service campaigns that need to be done. Like remember to share.
I would like to see them spend $1 million on a public service campaign versus that can run for the next 3 years.
We have so many ideas, but nobody's asking us.
That would make more sense. To be honest,
would make a lot more sense because and I heard this morning from a good friend down in Bolton Hill, and they said he basically said infrastructure changes are not going to help when the problem is behavioral.
Absolutely.
Right. And we got to take a different approach. We're wasting a lot of money on this infrastructure right now. It could be useful at some point in time, right? But today is not the day with all we got going on.
Yep.
So, but certainly appreciate you coming by. Like, we got to wrap up episode 14, the recap. The recap of the DOT hearing, but when we continue to post as much data as we come across, into the group as well as into this episode, you can't solve a problem until you admit what the problem is, and it's time for that reckoning here with our DOT. But we're going to examine what happened in the past, because I think there's some stuff that went on at the DOT, a couple of years ago before I was paying a lot of attention. But sometimes, it's good to go back and look at recent history and see where things might have gone off the rails.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Because it's certainly off the rails. But all right. Thank you so much for coming, Jovani. I really appreciate having you here.
Thanks for having me, Des.
All right. Until next time, be safe, Baltimore.